Hi there. Thanks for joining us on episode 9 of Future Secured, a podcast from the Murfin Group. Today we have special guest Daisy Wong, Culture and Awareness Lead at Flybuys. Daisy's job is to build a high-performing culture around cybersecurity so people take the right actions. This episode is crammed full of tips. Daisy talks about how deleting protects you, but reporting protects everyone. Can I encourage you to get to the end where Daisy gives some fantastic tips on team culture and what you can do to build a great culture in your team. Just before we dive in, can I ask you all a favour? Could you please hit that subscribe button? It's really important. It allows us to get bigger and better guests like Daisy on, really giving great tips for you out there that you can action. So subscribe, like, and comment. We'd love to hear from our audience. All right, it's an exciting episode beginning to end. Let's dive in. Welcome, listeners, to episode 9 of Future Secured. Thank you for joining us today. I have my regular co-host, Jason Murrell, and we have a special guest, Daisy Wong, the Security, Culture and Awareness Lead at Flybuys. But she's just about to finish up there and start a new role at Medibank. Now, in this episode, we're going to explore the critical role of integrating organisational culture into cybersecurity. I have a little sign above my desk, Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast, and I believe it is such an important idea to have in your head in business. And the places where the culture hasn't been set right is where strategy just is, you just can't implement it. It won't provide the results you want. So, Daisy, today we're going to dive in to a discussion that's going to focus on the benefits of creating a great culture within cybersecurity organizations. And some of the data has shown us that, there is a challenge around diversity and culture in cybersecurity in Australia. So thank you for joining us both. Thank you. And Jason, if you'd like to dive in.
Tom nailed the intro again. Love it, mate. I don't know what we do. I'm sure in post-edit we will. But Days, you're one of my favourite humans, part of the Cyber Wiggles, which is a very important group here in Australia. And this topic is one that I love talking about. I know you do too, and I think it's often overlooked. We worry about all these technical things and technical controls, and yet we hear all the time, that cybersecurity, the human element, is such an important part, and you nail it. So I'm looking forward to getting into this. But before we do that, I want to know, or let people know, because I've seen you obviously speak heaps at different events, and I love it, and that's why we've got you on here. But can you give us a bit of a background of your story, how you sort of ended up here, and just your general story, because I think it's a really interesting one.
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and thanks for coming to multiple of my presentations, Jason, and usually heckling me while I'm on stage.
But asking
it's
key
really
questions,
nice.
yeah.
Yeah, always. But no,
Yeah.
it's nice to be on your podcast. So just a really quick background. I'm Daisy. I've been in the cyber industry for about 10 years. It's very scary. I've passed the decade mark. So I actually started way back. My family are from Hong Kong. I was born and raised in Melbourne, first gen Chinese, and then growing up, you did the usual accounting, economics, all that. I ended up at uni. There was only 2 options. I ended up at Monash because I only had 2 options. So Monash was the one I picked. I did marketing. Completely not related to cyber IT. I should have been at L'Oreal selling lipstick. That's what I say all the time. Or maybe hair dye, whatever it is. Definitely nothing to do with cyber. And then I got my first job at IBM doing change coordination, procurement, and I'm like, what the hell is IT? I left that role and I literally parachuted and landed in a pen testing team with a marketing degree. That is basically what happened and how I started my career in cyber. But for those, I know we've got a video, but your audience may not be able to see. But if you don't know, I have a physical disability as well. If you didn't know, pink is my favorite color. My pink Ferrari, my pink wheelchair is also pink. Pink wheels is what I like to call it. But yeah, I feel like, there's been a decent share of challenges being first gen Chinese, female, cyber industry, male dominated. We know there's only 17% of the industry that are females, and being someone with a physical disability as well. And obviously, So that's kind of my background, but I'm also very passionate about helping people understand cybersecurity because there's a lot of jargon. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
If you can give us some of the background on how you sort of approach now the cyber awareness with the background you have. You've worked at VicGov, where I think first met you. You've been through Flybuys and now heading over to Medibank. you would have seen some
Yeah.
differences but similarities. What are you finding are the best way to approach, cultural and cyber awareness?
Yeah, I think the first thing is understanding your organization's cyber risks because every organization is different. So, it's not just rinse and repeat. It is quite costly and time consuming to create training material for each department, each organization, but I find that that works the best. And also language. So, in a big gov, the language was actually a lot more formal than it was than
Mm.
Flybuys. So we don't use staff or employees at Flybuys, it was team members. While in Big Gov, it was VPS, Victorian Public Service. So I think that even just a simple tweak is really important, and making the information relevant. So, if you don't have OT, why are you teaching your team members about OT and the risks and all that? Like Flybuys doesn't have a physical store. It's a loyalty program. So I think it's just really important to tailor it, and keep banging on about it. Language. Make it easy and digestible. You don't go to France and speak English and complain that the French don't know English. You try and speak French.
It's interesting you spoke there about a marketing background and then landing in a pen testing team. And, some of the things that you're talking about there around, the psychology of the way, you can positively influence someone rather than just scaring them or frightening them. How have they kind of, given you a different approach to building that kind of culture, say somewhere like Flybuys?
Yeah. So I often say I don't use, so obviously it's the carrot and the stick. I'm definitely carrot with cream cheese on top, make it a carrot cake. Because no one likes to be told not to do something. And you want to create a safe environment. So you want to create a psychologically safe environment where people, first of all, know who to contact if something is suspicious. They are able to admit that something's wrong, that they've done something wrong. They've clicked on a link, they've responded to someone. You want them to feel safe to report it to you because it's much easier for you to catch it early than for you to then try and handle a cyber incident. I'm sure we've all heard about, different incidents and they're hectic. So you want to avoid that. And yeah, I just think using common, psychology or marketing, you don't go buy something because someone yells at you. You buy something because it's enticing, you want it, it helps you. Do you know what I mean? You need to sell it to people. And that's why my friends who I went to uni with are like, what are you doing now? I'm like, I'm selling cyber. They're like, what? I'm like, literally marketing cyber to employees, staff, team members, people who generally, no offense, don't care. And it's okay that they don't care because they weren't hired to be cyber experts. I think that's also something that I think cyber professionals need to remember. We live and breathe cyber, but people, within the organization who are accountants, my best friend who's a nurse, they're not hired to be cyber professionals. Yes, they should be educated, they should be aware, but it's not really, their responsibility to wake up and be a cyber expert.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's exactly it. And again, like with Nigel, the sell thing comes up, right? And again,
Yeah.
Tom and I talk about this is everything in life is you're selling something, right? And if you're selling something for the betterment of someone else or trying to help someone, it ain't a bad thing, right? So you shouldn't feel so bad about selling, So I think your marketing background, that's one thing I thought, and you're such a personable person and so flamboyant and so out there. I think you're easy to connect with as well because you actually do care about people as well, and that is a key thing. And just as a buy, just so Tommy and the audience know, also has a very decent following on Instagram. We're up near 30,000 followers because
Nice.
obsessed with food and going out. And I've
Yes.
been on the tail end of a few of Daisy's dinner exploits, and there's pictures taken of every dish, and you can't put your hand in too early, and you got to do boomerang clicks of glasses, and
Tom,
yeah,
it's camera eats
that's
first.
another part that
So if
stays
we
pretty
Look,
quiet.
catch
But
up,
I think
yep,
some of
camera
that
eats
might have
first,
come
not you.
over into the cyber part as well, from there. So yeah, just one thing I just wanted to, because this is the thing, everyone knows phishing emails and the cultural part of it from a computer point of view, but can you just give us some of the ideas too on some of the stuff you do outside of the computer that actually help people with regard to keeping conversations going as well? Because I think that's really, really good, some of the stuff you do there.
Yeah, 100%. Oh, I think, when I think about cyber culture awareness, so like you said, one thing is phishing. So, and you have to reward good behavior, things like that. But I think engagement is really important. Like I said before, how do you get someone who isn't interested in cyber? How do you sell it to them? I think it's really important to, use the concept of what's in it for them. What's in it for me? Make it interesting for them. So, most people, I don't have children, but I have nieces. I've got daughters. Make it,
And you've got a
relevant
dog.
for them. I've got a dog as well.
Yeah.
I've got elderly parents. So make it relevant, because at the end of the day, it gets old if it's like, please don't click this because your organization might get hacked, right? That obviously, yes, I wouldn't want that to happen to my organization. However, I think it's more powerful if you tell me, hey, don't click this because it could happen to your elderly parents. They may lose their whole life savings. I think that's really important. The other thing I found really effective at Flybuys and other organizations is in-person events, now that COVID's hopefully well and truly gone and behind us. In-person presentations, in-person webinars, but make it relevant. So again, just because someone who's gone through a cyber, an identity theft problem, doesn't mean it's always relevant. You want to find someone that's relevant to your organization, who can connect with the audience as well. At Flybuys, we had one of our own managers had to go through an identity theft issue. So she did a presentation, and that was really effective because, it was personable. Other people could connect with her. But I found them really, really effective. When people can listen to someone's story and ask questions, and that's when it's the perfect timing to educate and train. Because someone's shared a story, they've connected with that person. Oh my gosh, whatever happens to me. And that's when you can educate and go, if you don't want this to happen to you, do these 5 things.
Story, it's an amazingly powerful tool for basically allowing people to empathize and to kind of match up. So, I think it's definitely something that is trending out, but that old, and you mentioned this, the phishing style campaign of trying to catch an employee out and frighten them and scare them. And when you kind of join the neurons in your brain from that lesson, it's not a positive experience. And so, the way you've been talking about those case studies almost, and those stories providing that kind of different impact, is that one of the strategies that you found the most effective in driving behavioural change?
Yeah, definitely. It's been very effective. And I think it's always important not just to fish, you need to close the loop. So phishing is just one tool, but you need to then provide explanations on where were the red flags, how could they have avoided it, and what are the positive behaviors, what's the call to action, and what are the reward. So I stole this from a friend, but I often say deleting protects you, reporting protects us all. Because deleting an email, whether it be a legitimate phishing or a phishing campaign, right? That is just you deleting it, poof, it's gone. But reporting it means that the security, like the SOC team or the security team, can actually investigate and be able to protect others. And this has actually happened at Flybuys. So, the CFO was receiving I think the CFO was sending out, not him obviously, but the cyber criminals were sending out emails impersonating the CFO. And it was sent to Flybuys team members' personal email. I reckon it was scraped through LinkedIn. And because that was reported, I was able to send out official comms. And we could also block it on the back end. So I think it's really important but that's the thing. What's the point in just phishing if you're just like, here, I'm here to test you, you failed. Do you know what I mean? You really need to go, it's okay that you clicked. I'd rather you click my link than a proper link. By the way, if you don't know what to do next time, report.
When Jason and I are working up strategies for some of the clients we work with, that destination postcard is so important, and starting with that positive example of change, often from the customer's perspective, it just allows you to work back and build an experience that people can follow and engage with. And and Jason's forever teaching me about like changing that kind of selling attitude, because I definitely was someone who grew up with that used car salesman in my head schema, and it made it a bit challenging to have some conversations. I'd love to dive into some of the slightly more challenging areas around culture, and diversity. As Jason said, you tick a few of the boxes there. What are some of the red flags? And you don't necessarily have to tell personal stories, but I'd love to kind of put it out there for the listeners. Here's some things that are telling me that culture's a bit off in my office, in my cybersecurity workspace. What are some of the things that you learnt that are really good red flags?
Yeah, of course. So I find that from experience, one of the biggest red flags is when others don't know that there is a security team or what the security team does. I've been in organizations that's happened where other people don't even know that there's a security team. It's just IT, but we're different and we should be different. So I think that's definitely a red flag. Also, the like consequences, like people don't feel safe that if they report something, that they'll be told off, they may lose their job, they might get a warning. That's another red flag. You want to have a green flag is you're welcoming and inviting. I think the other thing is, I often say this: get yourself a Daisy, but not all many organizations have a Daisy or have someone that is a mascot. Someone, and obviously it depends on the size of your organization. If you've got like 5,000, 50,000 people, one Daisy is not enough. But if you're a small enough organization, you really want a bit of a mascot, someone out there someone people know that they can trust and tell them that something's wrong. I think that's another red flag. And again, language. And I find another red flag is, I can say this from experience, not naming anything, but arrogance. So I find some technical people are just arrogant. They just expect you to know. Yep. I just told you they're a CFO. They have multiple degrees and certificates, which you don't know anything about accounting. So it's okay that they don't know about cyber. You don't need to be so arrogant. I think it's just having that empathy. And technology changes so fast. Like, why? Like, they're not stupid. No one's stupid. It's just things like, Gen AI, ChatGPT, it's just blown up, right? So people are just all trying to catch up, and you just need to empathize and help them.
Has that helped you at all, Days, in your job, like with AI and ChatGPT, with regard to any of the processes you've been maybe manually doing in the past that has actually helped you in the role, sort of moving forward?
Yeah, 100%. I will openly admit I type I draft something and I'll get ChatGPT or Copilot, whatever Gen AI tool you're permitted to use within your organization, to help me just check grammar, or sometimes it gives you really good ideas or formatting. So I think there's definitely a time and place, but you just need to use it safely. So that's another thing. I think a lot of people, the misconception is cyber security, the security team is going to say no, the team of no. They're going to stop me from using USB. They're going to stop me from using ChatGPT. They're going to stop me from this and that. No. I'm not that type. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying do it safely. So a simple tip I use and I tell my niece and nephew is, you can use whatever Gen AI you want to, but be smart and instead of putting your school's name in there, your mum and dad's name in there, just even put XX. XX is applying to XX school. I said, as simple as that, at least, you're not storing where you're working, your personal information, and then you copy that into a Word doc and then change the XX back to whatever school, your own name.
Yeah, I always use Tom's name all the time. So I've got this real itch. My name's Tom Finnigan, and I just need to find out what cream I should be using, So I always use Tom. It's a lot safer that way.
Oh, goodness me. I think, what we've seen in a few of the statistics is that that so many people are using Gen AI in the workspace without their boss's awareness. And I think, and so Nigel spoke on this in the last episode, which you've just mentioned there, is that, you cannot, the CISO or the IT cybersecurity team cannot be the team of no. So there's a cultural shift right there. So, you've touched on a few of these points. So can you just paint a picture of what you think the kind of really positive and the good interaction should be? What's that destination postcard with that cybersecurity, that IT, that culture team that's going to build a really, really good workforce?
I think, again, people knowing that they can go to the team. So, like, at Flybuys, we did block USB, which to me, I think is a little bit obsolete now anyway. I don't even think I can plug a USB into my laptop anymore. But again, like Google Drive, Dropbox, etc. So but there are use cases for it. So the marketing team cannot email a 15-minute video via email. So how do you help them? But I think so they could just, find a way to put it onto their personal laptop. There's all these things they can do, but I think the postcard is that they come to the security team first. They feel safe, they feel confident. We're not going to be the team of no. And, the security team also needs to learn how to risk assess. So if it's simply a marketing video sent to your partners where you have all these NDAs, data sharing agreements, I think it's okay. Open whatever share drive you need to get it done. I think that's another problem we have where security people are like, no, the policy says we do not use share drive or anything. The answer is no. But you need to think from a business point of view that the marketing team needs the video. And you're not building relations. And that's the other thing. I think a lot of the times the security team is a bit of an island, but it's actually it should just be another team within the business. Just like if when you do budgeting, you go to finance and accounting. When you need to sell something, it's marketing and comms. Same thing. If you're doing a project, you should also include the security team. And I think you should engage the security team earlier as well.
Yeah, and I really like that. It's interesting you say that. I've, predominantly had my career in either camera work, marketing, and PR. But one of the first things I've done, especially at Cyber and stuff like that, was go and speak to the IT team and say, "Look, I've got to move bigger files around. I've got videos I'm sending here and there." And building that relationship meant that they were comfortable in being a little flexible. They knew what I was doing, which was very important as well. And it kind of allowed me to kind of get on with my job rather than sitting there going, not even bothering to ask. So culture again, eat strategy for breakfast. So
100%. And see, like that's the culture, that if you need to send another file, they're not going to say no, they're going to be flexible. Or if they say, hey, we really can't, you'll understand. They've been so flexible with you for so long. And I think, they would have done their research and say, hey, we really can't because that organization's recently had a breach. Then I think you would be more understanding. But if it's a constant no, and, and the other thing I often say is security is a cost center. We're not a revenue generating team. Let's face it. It's just a fact. It's not good or bad. And I think, we just need to understand the business needs to continue making money, generating revenue and profit for the security team to survive.
But also, I think on that one, 2 days, I reckon that it is an insurance policy that you put in place, because if you do get a cyber attack, we've seen the amounts of money that can go out the door from a cyber attack, right? There's millions and millions of dollars. And the quickest way in some ways to put out of business is to do a cyber attack. It's the quickest way to lose money.
That's right.
Right. So, it is key. So how has those major attacks that have happened over the last couple of years, have they helped you in any way with regard to people taking more notice of the team and actually leaning into you a bit more to say, actually, we don't want that happening to us? Yeah, we're all ears. Has that made a bit of a difference for you guys?
Definitely. What is it? Never let an incident go to waste.
Yeah.
So yes, no, obviously not all publicity is good publicity, but it's better than. I think it's really helped. I think those who didn't understand or didn't care about cyber is now aware of it, because unfortunately most of us would know someone who's been impacted by one of the recent breaches. So I think it's really helped, and I've seen in the industry more people are hiring for security culture and awareness. I find that, however, it's often lumped with governance, risk, and compliance. I am a strong believer it should be separate. So, governance, risk, and compliance is its own field and, their own team, and security culture and awareness should be its own. If anything, I feel like culture and awareness should be closer to ops. Because I find the most effective is when the security culture and awareness team is closer to the operations, and you can use real incidents that your organization has had to deal with to create training material.
Okay. So again, the case studies, that's very, very clever.
Yeah.
When we were speaking to a previous guest and they highlighted the fact that, in some cases they'd said, I need a cybersecurity culture and engagement lead. Why do we need one of those? How is there a real kind of shift happening? Are you seeing lots more of these jobs advertised, or is it a bit of a peak and surge? Really, a cyber attack becomes visible, it's on the C-suite's awareness, and then just drops off again. What do you think's going on?
I think it's increased, it's peaked, but then it kind of falls off, and I think it really depends on the economy, because I think people process technology for whatever reason, and I understand as well, but most security teams focus on technology first. So using technology to protect the technology they have or the processes. And obviously it's important. A lot of the times, depending on your organization, you might have regulatory requirements, hence why you would focus so much on the governance, risk, and audits and all that. People are often left last. I have been told to my face, I'm a nice to have.
Yeah,
right.
It's not a necessity, and I understand because it's a very unique kind of space. So, am I just marketing? Not quite. You need to understand, cyber incidents, security. Are you just here to do phishing? Also, not quite. So, it's a very hard, function to explain. But I think the best way to explain it is managing human risk. So, I think initially it was all awareness. That my industry, or this function was just awareness. Then we moved into culture because it's talking about behavior change management, organizational culture. I think now the next phase is we're more talking about human risk management. And I think when you use risk management language, the C-suites, the executive seems to understand because they're always dealing with risk. And that's the thing. So so now that's, I think, how we're describing it. I think there still needs to be more. I don't think there's enough of myself in the industry. Again, like I said, it's always technology. So if you give a security team $1 million, I find 70% always goes to technology, and the SOC team, operations, all that. Another 20 probably goes to risk and compliance or process, and then finally 10 for your employees to have culture and awareness. While I think it should be spread equally.
And what are the top 3 things, Days, on that when you get that budget, are you really focused on, or do you think are the top 3 most important things you need to deliver? If you have that, Pareto's principle, that 80-20, so for 20% of that money will give you 80% of your result, where are you sort of putting that budget of what you get left?
So if I was to be given the remainder of the budget, so
Yeah,
when
like
I
how do
get,
you use your budget? Yeah, where's your key
yeah,
metrics on where you think you get biggest bang for buck?
yeah. So obviously, there's also different schools of thought. I do think phishing is a good tool. It's not the be or end all. You don't just fish, and like I said, you need to close the loop. But I think having a tool is good. There's other human risk management platforms out there now. So it tells you where your risks are, which teams are the riskiest, and which individuals. I find that that's really helped me because there was I don't have a team, there's only me. So if there is a platform which shows me, hey, these are the 20% of people you need to focus on, these are the teams, I can then create the content, etc. The other thing is, don't laugh, but events and gifts. So obviously, not, but it has to be rewards, but it has to be meaningful.
Yeah.
So not just, hey, you didn't click, so here's a $50 voucher.
And what's some
It's
examples of
more
that?
like,
Yeah, because I that's the part, because I have seen that there is reward. Like people say, here's a voucher or here's something. But how do you make it so it's relevant and noteworthy that it's also memorable for the people and the person?
so I often like to do it with a quiz. So, hey, come to this webinar. Here's an article on the intranet. Here's a quiz, because then it gets people reading or remembering key facts, and then it's often a voucher. Because of cost of living, I've done, supermarket vouchers previously. I've done Disney Plus, but something that's just, relevant as well, and just something useful.
Yeah, we use scorecards, which are a great way of self-assessing yourself in a kind of like strategic area. So it's a fantastic tool you've got there.
Oh, another one that was very popular was phone covers, like security phone protectors. That was a really good present as well, or prize, because people don't know that they exist. So, to give that, especially for those on for laptops for the finance team. And again, this is another thing. Try and give something that's useful.
Yeah.
That it's not effective just talking at people. Don't do this, do this, don't do this, do this. Like, give them actually something that they can use, they can do.
And something memorable they can see, because
Yeah.
that's the thing, like the government's gone the act now, stay secure. And I think your points,
Yeah.
just to recap on, especially how will it affect me in my personal life? This is what I've always said. If it's at work, they don't love work, they don't care, right? But if it's going to
That's right.
affect me or my family or other people I care and love, that's an issue, right? So the act now, stay secure thing is very much based around, passwords, password managers, multi-factor authentication, updates when available. How do you weave that into talking about it from a business context and also saying this is how you can also be helped at home? Or what little reminders or things have you been able to give them to help with that, to carry on outside
Yeah.
of the workplace?
So obviously, you create the content that is related to the business, but then I always say this also applies to your personal. If you have a personal phone, update your personal phone as well. At work, there is a security team. You can come to us if you have any problems, but we're not there. We aren't able to help you at home. So you need to help yourself.
Yep.
You need to help yourself. You need to help your children. You need to help the elderly. So I think always reminding them that the skills they learn at work also helps them at home has really helped. A lot of the webinars I do, if I can, I also open it up. So for say for Internet Day, I've worked with the eSafety Commission for quite a few years, and every time we do a webinar, we always open it up if we can to their to our team members' children as well. So again, they can bring their children along, or we've done sessions just for children.
Yep.
So it's
Very
not
cool.
just here's another webinar I have to go to because work told me. You actually make it relevant that they can bring their children as well.
Yeah, and then you can bribe the kids with lollies as well. So then there's another way you can
Exactly.
get lollies and chocolate involved. Before you open this chocolate, are you sure it's a chocolate? Is it safe? And then you go from there. So it's always a good way to go. And also, I think like going through, you would have seen the evolution over 10 years. It's been a lot of changes, but a lot of the stuff that I've been the same sort of time frame. A lot of the stuff over that period. A strong password is still a strong password. It hasn't changed. I would have thought they would have become obsolete. Like going back then, I remember when we started, even when Jono and I were doing cyberware, we thought this platform's only probably got 24 months, 36 months will be irrelevant, but the same tenets and the same stuff is still relevant today, isn't it? It's, no matter we talk about AI or things changing, a lot of the things have stayed the same, haven't they? So what stories or analogies do you use to help people link up with it and get it into layperson's terms? What are you using to actually, what have you found works best, for those little stories and analogies going along the way?
Keep it relevant. Like I said to you, keep it relevant. So I'm sure you would have heard the CFO in Hong Kong who, the deepfake video, who gave away, I think, half the year's revenue or profit. My friend actually knows the previous CFO. Just spoke to them yesterday. So I'm like, right, that person, poor guy, poor human. Yes. So I think keep it relevant. So keep your finger on the pulse. And stop talking about the same thing as well.
Yep.
So same thing with ads and marketing. You don't see the same ad over and over again, right? They keep it relevant, they keep it fresh. And thanks, Jason, for the plug about my Instagram profile, but it is true. Those skills have really helped me. Keep the content, interesting. I've spent so much time in Canva. It is ridiculous. I sometimes still am a graphic designer. But using those, I'm always I'm always searching for new stories. It doesn't need to be high profile, like I said. It just needs to be someone who's a good storyteller, who's relevant to the organization. But I just always try and keep it fresh. And I always, even with phishing, I think I always say there's method to my madness. It has to be relevant. So, you can't. So I know people who plan their phishing calendar for the whole year. They choose a template, they stick to it. It doesn't work because I change the template depending on the last result. So if the last result was really good, I'll make it more difficult the next time. Or I might do something that's a similar, because the results weren't good, I will use a similar template to retest them, because by then I would have trained them, told them the red flags, what they need to pick up. You want to see that improvement. I think just, pre-planning is great, but I think for me, it's more effective if you have your finger on the pulse and you change it depending on the results.
I've got a bit of a different question for both of you. Jason's incredibly passionate about, creating a stream of education, especially for women and young girls, right throughout our education cycle in order to really make an impact on that statistic you highlighted at the beginning of, 17% of women in cybersecurity. You're someone actually in there making a bit of change. So I'd love to hear from you first, Daisy, and then Jason, about the kind of things that we need to be doing to really start making an impact on this, because it hasn't shifted in the 5 years I've been focusing on cyber. It's just sitting there quite static, really.
Yeah. So yes, 17%. I also volunteer for the Australian Women's Security Network. So shameless plug. Only because I really want to help other women, because I have felt quite isolated before. I've been in multiple teams where I'm the only female, and then they point out that I'm also the only female who likes a full face of makeup, pink hair, long nails, etc. and it is quite isolating and lonely. So I just want to find someone who not looks or speaks like me, but more females. Unfortunately, I think the industry needs to do more to make it more, how do I say, accessible for females. More part-time roles. I obviously have a physical disability. You can see it. First of all, you can't unsee the pink hair, but you also can't unsee the pink wheels. But there's a lot of disabilities that are hidden. And I wouldn't know how to, I don't have those, fortunately, but for me, it's quite easy to ask to work from home, to make adjustments. But what about if you have a hidden, illness or disability? I think that's another problem. There's not enough part-time roles either. And I mean, Jason can tell you more. It's hard enough to get an entry-level role in cybersecurity. Everything you look at on LinkedIn, on Seek is 5 years experience, CISSP, CISM, Masters in Cyber, etc. It's so hard to get in to begin with. And then when you're a female, I think it's maybe triple hard. So I want to see the industry do more to make it more accessible. And I am a strong believer that you need to understand technical concepts, but you don't need to be on the tools to be in the industry. The industry is big enough. There is space for everyone, but that is my personal experience that I was constantly told, like Jason knows this, but Tom, you don't know. I was about to leave the industry because I was constantly told there is no space for you. You're not technical. You need to be hardcore on the tools for you to have a career in cyber. And I was about to leave because I'm like, I'm done. I'm constantly told my skill set isn't valued because I don't want to be on the tools. I don't want to be coding. I don't want to be breaking things. I don't want to be responding, but I know my skills are valuable. Sorry. And, I can still help the industry, but I just don't want to be on the tools, and that's okay. I think, we need to encourage all types of people from all backgrounds that if you want to be part of the cyber industry, there is space for you. We just need to find you that spot.
Right on. Yeah, and that's it. And I think that's the thing. Yeah, like what Dave's saying is, and it needs to start earlier. We need to start it in the schooling system as well, and open up that career pathway and showing that cybersecurity is a pathway for a lot of people, but also people who want a career change as well. Because as Daisy said, I think what we need out of cybersecurity is the technicality of cybersecurity and actually make it more approachable for the layperson. There's such a gulf in between the technicality of cybersecurity, which can be quite scary, and then breaking it down into layperson's terms. I think male, female, neurodiverse, whatever, we need everyone in and part of that conversation. And cybersecurity, as I said, should be as natural as brushing your teeth in the morning and night or after a meal and putting your seatbelt on when you go in a car. Cybersecurity should be that natural, that it's just that known. It shouldn't be as technical as it is, because it does scare a lot of people away, and we scare a lot of good people away. And why I love what Daisy does is to take the technicality out of it and actually make it so it's approachable and something that a layperson can understand. That's what we need more of, not more people making it confusing, but more people finding simple analogies and stories and ways to approach cybersecurity so it isn't something to be feared, but something, like a seatbelt is going to protect you if you ever get in the situation, right? So, and that's why we always use the stories like, the password is the seatbelt, the multi-factor is the airbags, and when you get your car serviced, there's your updates, right? So things that you can use that they can relate to, and they go, okay, well, that makes sense. And I always put my seatbelt on, should have a password or a password manager and uniqueness across the board, multi-factor authentication. Yeah, I wouldn't jump in a car now without airbags just in case, right? Because it's extra protection.
Exactly.
So it's all these things that people then can relate to, and that's what we need to break it away from. And that'll make it so then more women will want to be in there, and men have got to be the champions and the mentors for it. Like Daisy and I, and with a lot of women, I have more difficult conversations with females, as in, opening up, and a lot more upfront than you do with guys. Guys tend to shut down and not share the stuff. Women at least are out there saying, there's a lot of guys having a lot of problems inside, but they don't speak about it, right? At least women are upfront and forthright and actually trying to champion that. I think as guys, we need to do more to support women, but also need to be more open and vulnerable ourselves in the market in cyber. I think that'll make a big difference.
I might add to that, Jason, that it is hard, especially when I was younger, being the only female at the table, to have a voice. This is where I often, remind people my Chinese upbringing as well, that, to be a good child, you are quiet.
Yep.
So,
You've
it
made
was
up for
very
it now,
difficult.
though, Daisy. which is good. You've made up for it now, so.
I'm a little bit too loud now. but but no, I have made up for it. But no, I often tell my goddaughters, my niece that as well. Like, speaking up isn't a bad thing. But like I said, culturally, if there was someone senior, you don't speak.
Yep.
It's frowned upon. And I think that, but then the problem with that is if you don't know the Chinese culture, you might think we're aloof, we're meek, we're not interested, but it's not. We just need to be encouraged. And I think that, the male champions I'm very lucky to have. Yes, Jason, you're one of them. The Cyber Wiggles are another, really supportive male champions, but I think they've really championed me to speak up as well. Or
No, I think you're talking and on stage is great. Like that's the thing is what I've seen the evolution of you is to be able to get on stage and share your story and people can really connect to it because there's the cultural element, the stuff you have to go through with your disability. I remember some of the stuff you said about your mum when she was doing your legs on something, you had broken legs. If you haven't seen Daisy speak, get out there and see it because it is a crazy story in a lot of fronts. And AWSN, you've done a shout out there. You do a lot of work there. And I think that's important too, because that was a group of women going to a conference saying, let's go have breakfast together and then let's go as a group together. Because I remember we had Rachel Ettridge was one of our first so students who came in to Cyber Aware when we were doing Cyber Aware, and she was a fantastic resource, one of the best people I've ever employed to start in cybersecurity. I think she was studying forensics or something at uni, and I think her dad was in cyber, but she went to an event. We said, go to an event so you can start to network and get to know the industry. She went there. It was a room full of men. She basically called me on the phone and she said, I'm in the corner of the room. I'm the only girl here. And she would have only been late teens, 20 maybe. And she's like, what do? I'm just freaking out. I said, just get out of there. Just get out. If you're not comfortable, just get out of there. But that's the thing. It's like she's a young girl goes to this event and it's just wall-to-wall men, So, I think AWSN and those sorts of groups have made a fantastic inroads in there. But, we still got a long way to go.
There's a pretty simple recipe. Every culturally diverse team I've ever worked in has had a diversity of thought, and that diversity of thought has allowed it to be more impactful, more strategic, and execute more work than any other team. So it just, it's kind of a little crazy. We're running short on time here. It's been a fantastic conversation. I've got one last question for you. I'm sure Jason will have one as well. But maybe three. What's a message that you'd love to be given out there to cybersecurity boards and CEOs that currently don't have a role like yours in place? What is the justification, or why should they get up there of the right size? They're risking kind of not being able to deal with the human capital correctly in a cyber sense and help protect, the whole business. As you said, it's a very, very different thing to kind of like just, be able to delete that email rather than to have a loop where you're like, no, I need to bring this to people's awareness. And even if I've done something wrong, I know they're going to handle it in a way that is going to allow me to kind of learn rather than just, I'm the bad person. So what would a piece of advice be?
I would say that, I don't know if you've heard, but a lot of people say, humans are the weakest link. I actually think if you put the time, effort, and investment, they can be your strongest asset. And last time I checked, we're not your organization still needs people. You're not completely run off AI. So why are you investing so much money in technology, again, process, but not enough on your people? So, I'm sure organizations are headhunting, excellent talent, but they're not then, hiring someone to manage the human risk for their organization. So I think that's the main message I want to give, that, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So don't think security is just putting money into your SOC or putting money into buying the next, upgraded technology. You also need to think about the basics, and it's just the people who run your business.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, because I just people just don't know, and that's why we need to do this and put it out there, because people must consider it. They must think, well, do we need it? How do we do it? What's the thing? So, I think having you on is great, Days, because there's so much we could do. There's probably going to be a part 2 or 3, I think, with this.
So I'd like to say thank you very much, Daisy, for joining us. This has been a fantastic episode. I really love diving into this area because it's a lot about the human behavior psychology. It's a lot about the world that I work in. Like yourself, I'm not a technical cybersecurity person, but I've been embraced by the industry And one of the things that, like Jason at Cyber, we had a huge focus on, we would like to see is an improvement in the diversity across the industry. So, listeners, you can find Daisy on LinkedIn and on Instagram if you'd like to see what food she's eating. And they are spectacular pictures, and Jason's arm won't be in there because she will have pushed it right out of the
that's
way.
right. I'll be cropped out.
Thank you again,
100%.
Jason, for joining us. And once you've started at Medibank and settled in, hopefully we'll be able to have you on again and learn about the great work you're doing there. So thank you, Daisy. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Tom.
Sounds
Thanks,
good. Thank
Daisy.
you, Tom. Thanks, Jason.